For our second session of the afternoon, we'll have two other presentations. The first one is on ArcGIS Online, Story Maps, Survey 123. We'll have an intro and demo from Courtney Claessens. Claessens. Courtney Claessens from Esri. Thanks, Courtney. Oh.
Thanks you all for coming. I'm a product engineer on the ArcGIS Open Data team based out of the Research and Development Center in Rosslyn, Virginia. So day in, day out, I'm working on ArcGIS Open Data, but I'm really excited to talk to you today about more things than just that. We're going to be looking at Survey 123. We're going to be looking at ArcGIS Online. We will be looking at Open Data briefly, and also story maps. And these are all integrated solutions, but they also give you the freedom of choice. So we're going to be talking about these solutions, and I'll also talk to when they're based on open standards and how they interoperate with other tools that we've been seeing today, and how you can take things from those other tools and bring them into ArcGIS, how you can take things from ArcGIS and use them with the other tools that you've been seeing. So we're going to be looking through 4 steps, and I want to tell a story and showcase some work that has been done in Kharkiv, Ukraine, with secondary cities there, and talk to what they're doing, but also extend it. So we're going to be starting with data collection based off of survey creation with Survey 123. So creating different types of surveys and then giving them to community members, university students to go out and collect this data. What do we do once we have that data collected? And this is stuff that they're working through right now. I'm going to talk about some examples that we have about how to manage that data and disseminate it back to the community, to the public, so anyone can access it, and then how we can take that data and then tell more stories with it, create narratives, provide insight, and turn that data into information that other people can use. So we'll start with survey creation. Survey 123 is one of the survey products that ArcGIS has. There are other things, if you've heard of Geoformer Collector, things like that. Those are good tools that hit different marks. They're all kind of different. But today we're going to talk about Survey 123. And it's based on an open standard, which is the cool part about this, that it makes it interoperable with other things. So we use XLS forms, and that's what also Kobo Toolbox uses if you were in that session earlier today, to build the forms and then to share them out with your community. So all of the results from the form get stored into a web service that is hosted in ArcGIS Online. So whenever people are filling out the surveys and updating them and everything like that, those points will show up on the map in the feature service, and we'll take a look at that. But again, it being based on XLS forms, you can create surveys with Survey 123 and then use that survey in a different tool. You can also take tools that you have, surveys that you've used in other tools in XLS forms and bring them into Survey 123. So looking at this in action, in Kharkiv, Ukraine, Secondary Cities has been working with AG and the university there they have 3 surveys that they're working on. They have one for mobility features, one for public safety, and one for community resources. And they've conducted these 3 surveys in and around the university in the city there to build up those data sets, because there's a lot of missing data, as we know, in these types of places. So in 3 weeks, they've amassed a whole bunch of data, which is really, really awesome. They have, I think, 8 teams that are going out there with the surveys on their phones. There's a mobile app that you download, and then they go out there and they're in the field, and they're looking at things like accessibility of curbs, something that was just pretty, it seems like it's pretty basic, but it's really, really important for people to get around, for emergency management, for just general accessibility. So after 3 weeks, there's almost 2,000 mobility features, over 1,000 community resources, and almost 11,000 public safety features. So it's an incredible amount of data that's been gathered pretty quickly. And these are some examples of the photos that they've added to some of the points that they've created, collected through Survey 123. So we'll take a little look at what that looks like. Cursor. So Survey 123 Connect, it's in beta. So it's a continuous development, not all the features are fully there yet. But you come in here, you download it, it's a desktop application. And then you can create a new survey. I have one that's kind of started already. Once you hit that button, it's going to open up Excel. So you have to have Microsoft Office. And then this is the XLS forms, the standard that I was referring to before. So if you've already had one of these created, you can just plop that in there and there you go. But there are a few different things that you can do in here. So I've added 2 different types of questions. These are taken from the Kharkiv surveys. One being, is there a street intersection, stairs? Is this a street intersection, stairs, or subway entrance? So this is a select one of type. And then how you configure it is over in the choices. Then we have 3 type selections for street, stairs, and subways, and then the labels. And again, I work on open data. I don't work with Survey 123 at all. But there was a really helpful 10-minute tutorial video on YouTube that taught me how to do this. So pretty cool, pretty accessible if you have access to Microsoft Office and things like that. So we can come in here and we'll add in a geopoint. We'll call it location. And then, so C is what they see on the survey, and then B, this is the titles of your fields in the attribute table. So let's save this, and then we'll come back to survey 123, and it's going to take it from there, and now we have a location question. Pretty sweet. Okay, so when you're done with your survey, then you can upload it. And I've already published this survey, so it's telling me that if I do it again, I'm going to lose everything that I had before. But we can go ahead, and we'll see this here in your survey 123. But what it also does, and this is the really cool part, is this is my ArcGIS Online organization. We come in here, it creates a new folder for Survey Secondary Cities, and it creates that form. This is what you can share out with other people. It also creates this feature layer. So this we can open up on the map in ArcGIS Online. We can share it out through Open Data, which we'll look at in a second. But every time someone is on their app or going around Kharkiv selecting, entering data points, it shows up in this feature layer. So it's continuously updating, and when people are looking at maps that reference that feature layer, it's always getting the most up-to-date data. So this is one of Kharkiv's data sets from their survey. This is their mobility features data set. We can zoom in.
So do all the contributors have to have their ArcGIS Online account with that organization?
Yes, right now they do. Eventually it will be able to be shared with the public, but right now you have to have an organization. It's the joys of beta product. But yeah, so then these are all of the points that were collected with Survey 123. Let's hop back. And I'll talk about how we would manage that data and then how we would share that data out with other people that are not in our organization that would want to access it, do cool things with it. So the resulting data set, as we just looked at, is cloud hosted, so you don't have to set up a server or anything like that. And you manage it in ArcGIS Online. And there you have the power to share it with certain groups. Different users have different roles and access to the data for editing it and things like that. And you can share it through ArcGIS Open Data. So it's a really, really valuable data set that can inform lots of research, can inform different insights and narratives and storytellings and things like that. So first we have to make that accessible and share it with people. So ArcGIS Open Data is part of the ArcGIS platform, and everyone with an ArcGIS Online account has access to share this out with everybody. We see governments, NGOs, universities make their own open data sites, but you don't need to do that. You don't need to make your own site just to make it available. So we'll look at how to share it on our umbrella site. And we develop ArcGIS Open Data with these 4 principles in mind. We want to make data accessible. So that's just like going to the internet, can I get it? FTP sites have accessible data. Beyond that, we want to make it discoverable. So can we search for it? How easy is this data to find? Once we find something that we like, do we see related data sets? Other things like that. How can we find new data? Because there's so much data out there, we don't even know exactly what is available, and there could be something really cool that we don't know where to look for it. And then explorable. So you have your data set. It's really interesting to like pour into that data set and pull out certain attributes. If you're only interested in mobility features, accessible curves from that one data set, or if you're only interested in a certain geographic location. So if you have a global or national data set, but you only want one specific state, if you can do that on the web and get really into the data that you're looking at without having to download a shapefile and hopefully you have something to open it up with and everything like that, it really lowers the barriers for people to be finding this data and looking at it. And then collaborative. I want to take this data set and download it over here and then use it somewhere else. And I want to share it with you, and then I'm going to mash it up with this other thing. So taking away those tech limitations and licenses, yeah?
So should there be another characteristic here that addresses the issue of, say, reliability, or how good is the data? I don't see that as being covered by one of these.
Yeah, so that is a very interesting problem, and it's really hard for technologists, I think, to solve that problem. I think that comes up first, like before we publish out the data, like how do we make sure that it's good and everything like that. So I think that's in a little bit of a different sector. There's things that we can definitely do to give like a quality score to something. This is like 80% complete metadata and things like that. And those are some things that we're working towards, but I think it's a collaborative effort.
And Melinda, I think the OpenStreetMap does a great job with their governance of data because they have users and it's open, but you have to have an account to be able to get in there. It's free, so everybody can get it. But then before that data, anybody can create data. Before that data is seen by any of us, somebody is looking at it. So there's nothing completely incorrect. I mean, there's still some issues out there, but there's not some really offensive items that are in there that could happen. And so if you look at their governance of the way that their site is put together, we've paid attention to the way that worked. And it's a good thing, but there's a human involved, right?
So these are some screenshots of open data, and we're looking at polling locations in Boston. And the ability to just create simple charts and do this last one is a heat map in ArcGIS Online, which we'll look at. But it gives new insights onto the data and lets you look at it in a few different ways and pull out different types of information. So we'll take a look at that. All right, so let's go back to our content. And this org has open data enabled already, but if you don't have open data enabled in your org, the administrator just has to go in and click the button in the org settings. We can go ahead and we can share this with a group. So when you make open data available for your org, it doesn't mean that all of the data in your org is available as open data. You organize it by different groups. So I've shared it with the Secondary Cities Symposium Open Data Group. And then once it's done that, we can go to opendata.arcgis.com. And this is our umbrella site. This is totally public facing. I'm not logged in right now. And you can access almost 50,000 data sets from around the world. But we can search for mobility, Kharkiv. Cool, and here's our data set. And it's a different way to explore it. I don't know if anyone here has tried to search for things on ArcGIS Online. It's not the easiest. So this is a way for, provides like a one-stop shop for different types of data and offers those different ways to view it and explore it like I was talking about before. So I'll make this smaller. So here we can see the description that came from the ArcGIS Online item. We can see the different attributes, and these are the questions that were asked in the survey. When we switch over to the data tab, we can see all of this is the attribute table. We can see all of the responses. And then we can filter out if we would like to. So is there a curb, cut, or ramp for pedestrians to transition from the sidewalk to the street? Let's filter and just pull out the ones where there is not. And we'll see the map change, and this was higher than 622 before. So now we're looking at just a subset of the data. We can pull this data set out and use it for something else. And how we would do that is downloading the data in different formats. Spreadsheet will give you a CSV, KML, or a shapefile, and we are adding file geodatabase in 2 weeks, or accessing it through open APIs, so the GeoJSON or GeoService.
And so when you download that data, does the metadata come with it?
The metadata will come in the shapefile if it's been added in ArcGIS Online. Yeah. Another cool thing that is relatively new is this API Explorer. So this data set that is from Survey 123 is backed by an open API. So developers, people can go and hit the API and pull out the features and use them in any kind of web app that they would like to. The API, again, is kind of difficult to query, so we added in this API Explorer where you can come in and add different, these are just SQL clauses that we're going to be adding in. So again, we can go curb, cut, or ramp, like, no. If we don't want the object ID, we don't care about the feature type, like that kind of thing, we'll do that. If you want to apply a spatial filter, we can do this with the map. So if we say yes, and then we go up here and we only want the ones in the city center, we'll just zoom in the map, and then the feature, the query is going to take the extent. So if you look down here, this is the extent that's coming in, and we can see that change when we move it around. And then we'll try it out. So there's our resulting JSON. So we just used the API to query this feature service and gotten it back all right here.
Can we view the metadata?
Yeah, so when we click view metadata, this links back to the ArcGIS Online item. And that is because I made a copy of their data, so I didn't want to mess up their data. Not that I'm messing up data, but if you go to ArcGIS Online, then you can add structured metadata. So you can like upload your ISO, your North American standards, things like that. And then that'll come down with the shapefile. And you don't have to go through this crazy thing. You can just open one that you have locally wherever you store it. And then there's scripts as well that we can help you with to just automate that whole process. But then, so if you have that, if this data set had that on there, you click view metadata, the XML would open up. It's a long-winded way to say that. Okay, cool. So we've created the survey. People have gone out, collected thousands of points, and then we've shared that data back out with the public so anyone can access it. The next steps is what's the knowledge, the information that can come out of all those points on the map, all those fields in the table, which are very, very useful, but it's hard to make decisions. Like, you need the analysis of it. We need those intermediaries to take the data and turn it into something else. So we want to take the data and turn it into information. And I'm going to talk about ArcGIS Online in the demo, and I'll look at story maps as well. Story maps are simple web maps that combine interactive maps, multimedia content, so you can add in YouTube videos, you can add in images from Flickr or Facebook. You can add in actual websites. And user experiences and overlaying that all together to tell stories about the world. And in the plenary at the UC last year, Jack Dangerman, the president of Esri, said that there are millions of story maps being viewed every day. I don't know if that's true, but there are a lot.
That's our number, millions.
Yeah. So most story maps are hosted by Esri in the cloud. They're completely free for anyone to go in and access and make, and then we'll host them for you, but you can host them yourself if you would like to. And they all incorporate builder functions. So we'll go through and we'll look at one of the templates. There are a bunch of different templates for you to use, but it guides you through this setup in the storytelling process. And they're made to scale. So you can use them on phones, tablets, etc., and they're open source. So I think there are 11 templates that are in repos on GitHub for you to go and completely fork and develop on or copy if there's something in there or there's a feature missing that you want to have in there and you got some skills, you can put it in yourself and then use that. So these are some examples of different kinds of story maps that have been done. There's private sector, public sector, universities, nonprofits, schools are using these to tell different kinds of stories with geographic data. And again, they are all on GitHub. So we'll take a look at that. So the first thing that I want to do is, again, add this layer to a new map. And we'll look at how we can use ArcGIS Online before we launch into story maps to do a little bit of data munging, a little bit of analysis, a little bit of map making and symbology and things like that. So right now what we have is we've done some simple smart mapping. So here we can go in and pick an attribute to show. And again, I picked, is there a curb cut for pedestrians for the transition? And then we can do I've done a simple, unique symbol map here. So we have yes, no, and we have other. You can also do heat maps, and you can do just location, pure location. So if we want to pull out, again, just the ones where there is no transition, and then do some analysis just on that one layer, we can do that in here as well. So we have the option to filter. So we'll filter out here, is there a curb cut out, yes or no? We'll just pick no. And we will apply this filter. And now we're only looking at the ones that are no. From this is just filtering out that. It didn't make a new layer, but we can make that new layer, which we would want to then do some analysis on. So we can copy this. And now we have just this one. Once we remove this filter, all those other ones will come back. So we'll just take a look at this one. And then here, let's hop back into doing some visualization. We have a heat map of places where there is no transition. So we can see areas that maybe need some attention, that these places would be good to focus on to increase the accessibility, that kind of thing. What we can also do, let's do this and let's save. Let's remove this guy and let's save this map. I'm saving this map so that we can use it in our story map next. And then we can do some analysis. So we'll hop over into our analysis tab and let's go to analyze patterns. And we can do a hotspot analysis of the places where there's no cutout curb. So let's leave all the defaults in there. And I'm not going to click run analysis because I tried to do this earlier and it took a very long time. but I can add in the layer that I had before. So I'm going to look in my content. And then here I have this hotspots of mobility features, so we can add this. And then so this is the result. If we let that run for a few minutes, then this is what we would end up with. So we can see statistically significant hot spots, statistically significant cold spots in places that have no statistic significance. And then again, we can save this as a different map. Okay. So now if we go to my content, we'll see that we have a few web maps and then feature layers that I was working with. So let's move over into story maps. Storymaps.arcgis.com is where you can go to find all of the different templates, and you can find different, you can preview examples and things like that and see pretty awesome different stories. So we're going to look at a map journal template today. And once you click build a map journal, you'll get launched into the builder. So this is what I was referring to before. And we'll just walk through a basic how to set this up. So you can pick the side panel or the floating panel. And you can view a live example. Let's see if this will load. Just give you an idea of the kind of thing that we would be building. So again, this is the map journal, and we're looking at, this was made last year during the World Cup, and looking at the World Cup stadiums in Brazil. So we have interactive maps on the side here. And then we can scroll down, and we see the pane change and then the information change. And again, you can do satellite imagery, you can do other web maps, and if you had YouTube videos that you wanted to embed or different pictures, things like that, you can work on that as well. So different ways to showcase the information that you have. So we can do that with our CarCube data. So we're going to look at so we have the main stage and we have the side panel. And it's going to ask us what maps we want to add in to our main stage. And if you want to create one right in here, it embeds that ArcGIS Online map viewer that we were just looking at right in here. So you don't even have to use ArcGIS Online. You just leverages that right in here. But we already have some maps. So the first thing that we want to look at is the mobility features, the whole thing. And let's use a custom configuration. This is going to ask us to set the extent. And this is actually pretty good. This data set has an errant point in Washington, D.C., so it always makes the default extent like across the whole globe. I think for testing when they were starting that out. And then you can change the configuration of your pop-up if you want to have something custom in there, and configuring just the content. If this web map had multiple layers in it, then you could just select out what layers you wanted. And an overview map. I'm going to add in a legend because this is already symbolized. And there we go. So now we're looking at the side panel. So okay. So that's our first section. We can add another one. And we can add the heat map of the inaccessible curves. All right. So we start off here. People can come in and look at the data that's been collected by Survey 123 and explore where the curves are accessible and inaccessible. And moving down, just diving a little bit deeper into other ways to visualize this data. Let's add our last section for the hotspot analysis. Here we go. Okay. And then once we save it, we can share that out. Let's just preview it. So now this can be shared out totally publicly, and people can come in here and explore the data in a little bit more accessible way than just looking at things in a table and things like that, and then see whatever kind of analysis was done by whoever has accessed it.
Does the legend have to stay in the .com menu?
I think if this was not such a crazy, oh, maybe I'm wrong. I'm not sure. I think yes, but it's also,
Yeah, I think you can get rid of it, or you can also insert it over on the left, so that you don't have to have it up there on the top. You can do almost everything on that thing on the left. Pictures, graphs, it's like a PowerPoint almost on the left, but it all connected to the left.
okay. So overall, going through that workflow, taking the data from Survey 123, the original collection of the data in the field, and then making that data available to everyone else, just that act in itself I think is pretty cool, because you're leveraging the local knowledge of the people actually out there on the ground with their phones, and then giving that to the world, people that can take that data and apply their more domain-specific knowledge to come up with analyses and answer questions and things like that. So we're like connecting these two groups of people in ways that would not be able to meet like that before. So going through Survey 123 for collecting the data in the field, and then disseminating, managing that data in ArcGIS Online, and then anyone coming in and taking those story maps and turning that data into real insights that other people can read about and tell other people about and showcase the awesome work that's being done in these secondary cities. So for resources, Esri's on GitHub. There's over probably, I think, 200 repos on there. So some of the things that we talked about today and other things as well. Opendata.arcgis.com, again, is like a one-stop shop for a whole bunch of different data types. And then storymaps.esri.com is where you can go to explore a whole bunch of different story maps examples and the different kinds of tutorials and the builders that are out there. Learn.arcgis.com is a really good way to dip your toes into ArcGIS Online and how to build maps on there and how to do some analyses and things like that. There are tutorials that you can go through. Not dissimilar to the CartoDB Academy that we saw if you were in that talk earlier today. And then finally, developers.esri.com. If you go there and you sign up for a developer's account, it's a free account and you get 50 credits a month, which is good for ArcGIS Online. The hotspot analysis that we did incur some credit cost. I think it cost like 1.3 credits from the amount of data that we had there. So if you sign up for a developer's account, that'll give you access and give you an introduction to the tools and different things to play around with as well. So if you have questions about the technology, we can talk about that. If you have questions on how to get this for your organization, for your project that you're working on, Tiffany is also here from Esri who can speak to that. Thank you.
There is time for a few questions, if anyone has any questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tiffany, you
I think they wanted on.
One of you forward, please.
Tiffany, you mentioned about the QA/QC aspects of managing the data and how that was inspired by the OpenStreetMap governance approach. Can you elaborate on how this is been done, and if it's possible to, for example, update information while you're in the field through the mobile application, or it's something that it's done in the office or through the web application?
You know, talk about updating for
Yeah, so you can, do you mean like edit a point that you've already made? Or?
mentioned about the quality control on the data has been inspired by the OpenStreetMap governance approach to sharing.
Yeah. Do I need your vote?
Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
No, good.
Well, thanks. What Melinda's question was talking about, really making sure that there's quality of data. And what I had mentioned was I was giving OpenStreetMap credit for their governance. We really appreciate the way that they've run their site. We love having OSM maps on our sites because we know that OSM does have that governance where they do have user accounts. They can see everything that user did. So if somebody went in and did something that wasn't appropriate or just was in the middle of the ocean, just wrong, then they can get rid of it. They can also monitor that user. Maybe they could delete that user if that user keeps coming back and doing the wrong thing. So that's what I was talking about when it comes to governance of a site. It's something that we, in GIS and in open data in general, we always need to have sort of that human aspect of making sure we're checking, we're doing QA/QC, and we're making sure that there is accountability and accurate data out there for us all to use. So that's a little bit of what they've done, and we really like the way that they've done that.
No, exactly. That's exactly where. And I was curious how you implemented those aspects in your system. If you have that type of control on the users, and if you get statistics, for example, this user is always creating points outside of the area of interest. Is that incorporated into the application?
Yeah, absolutely. User accounts or what's the term that I'm looking for here? Having okay, there's a unique identifier for every person that's on AGOL, and the administrator of that account is able to give that person different permissions so that they can do different things with the data. Mainly because Esri is running a bunch of servers in the background, right? So if you start processing imagery, you're going to burn up a lot of that server, like any other server, right? You process things. You're burning up processing power on the server. So we call those credits, and that's why AGOL costs a little bit, because it costs us money too to run it. And so what we do is we give different permissions. So if you're an administrator, you can give some people full permission, but you might want to give your beginners a little bit of less permission because they might not know if they start processing some data and start burning up too many credits or something. So that's how we have, was it 3 different levels, do you know, of AGOL users? I think there's 3 different levels of permission, and they can do different things. So it helps us out. It helps, really it doesn't, it helps you guys be able to run your system and run your GIS shop or your community that is working on that map. Does that make sense?
Also, I just have a point. No, another thing that I was talking with Candace at AAG, who's been working with people in Kharkiv and setting up these surveys and everything like that, and they are going through their own QA/QC process on this data and everything. So it is kind of a two-way street, and there is work that the data owners do as well.
I would just add to that at the end of the day, it's up to the people who are doing the project that they have to do their own QA/QC in this. It's not going to be some solution that necessarily ArcGIS Online is going to do for them. So this is something that I have a lot of angst about.
Computers aren't very smart, right?
Yeah, my question was more about the specific open data set, where if it's OpenStreetMap and someone edits the house, my house, and it does, makes a weird shape, I can go and, fix it. I wonder if you have that same approach in opendata.arcgis.com, where someone sees data and maybe it's not updated or it's not right. Can anyone just fix it?
You're right in that I didn't really explain ArcGIS Open Data, but that is all. That's none of Esri's data, and it's read-only data. So that is data that Washington D.C. has shared out. That's data that NOAA has shared out. All these different organizations that are using open data to make their own data sites and comply with government mandates and everything like that. What we were looking at is an aggregate of all those open data sites and sets and things like that. So people cannot edit those data sets.
It's not like the base map OSM is. There we go.
You kind of answered my question just with your last statement. Are you encouraging organizations of all sizes to use your open data portal as their repository? Because it seems like a great comprehensive way for the public to interact with it.
Yeah, absolutely. We have almost, I think, 3,000 sites up or something like that. And we're definitely actively encouraging organizations, governments of all sizes to do it, nonprofit, and even some companies are starting to do it. It's really, really great in a few ways. One, we can leverage the fact that most governments already have ArcGIS, and so it's included with everything that they have. They don't have to pay the salary of like a teacher to spin up an open data site or anything like that. And then we connect directly to the source. So if you see like services, like ArcGIS services floating around the internet, those can be registered and then shared out as open data. So a lot of governments and organizations already have their server set up, and they already have everything managed in the way that it needs to be to then get shared out and be made open and public.
Does
Sure.
it cost credits to host that data every month, or to have people pull it from the open data site?
It does not cost credits to spin up an open data site or like number of views or downloads or anything like that. The only way that you would incur credits is if you're storing data in ArcGIS Online, which is what, like if you're storing data in online, you'd be paying for that anyway. If you have your data on your server and you're registering that data in online to be shared, then you're not going to run into any credits there. And there's no API rate limits or anything like that. Yep.
One last question.
I have a question about imagery. I didn't see any imagery that were brought into the project
For
could you-
open data?
for AGOL in general and the project in specifically.
Yeah, I'm not sure if for the surveys doesn't have any imagery or anything like that. You can take photos, but it's not contributing to any raster data. ArcGIS Online does support raster data and imagery in the form of image services. So those are also supported in ArcGIS Open Data. So people can go and find forest cover data sets and things like that and download those in different like GeoTIFFs and stuff like that.
So you have no default imagery data sets that are available
There
in
are
AGOL, or can the project, if it has imagery, keep them on their server for users to use then?
Yeah, absolutely. There are the same imagery that you see in the background of like an OSM, like Bing. That Bing imagery is already in AGOL, so that imagery is there in any imagery that you want to put up. So if you want to put digital globe up there, we can serve it out and put it for any part of the world that you want to have high res, something a little bit better. You can also put in your remote sensing data and mess around with it a little bit more so that you can see different bands. So it's pretty robust in that case. It's just a matter of how much space, you want to treat imagery different when it's on the web, but it can be managed pretty effectively. They've built it in pretty well. Just because it's so much bigger, that's why it gets managed differently.
Thank you.
Okay, let's give a hand for these presenters, Tiffany and Courtney. And we'll move right along to our final breakout session for the afternoon, which will be Ben Lewis talking about world map.